Welcome to Off the Page, the show where we talk with Colorado authors to get the story behind the story. I'm Stacy McKenzie, a librarian here at Mamie Dowd Eisenhower Public Library in Broomfield, and today I'm so happy to have Diann Logan on the show with me with her book, The Naval Diaries, How I Lost My Belly Button and Found Myself. Hi Diann, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. And such a pleasure to be here.
I'm so happy to have you on the show. Yes, we're so excited to get started talking about the Naval Diaries. Before we talk about the Naval Diaries, though, I have to point out this is not your first publication. No. So you have published before, yes, but they were quite different books. Tell me about those.
The other book that you're referring to was actually a book of quilt designs, original quilt patterns, and so it included stories about the quilts, but it also included very detailed instructions for the reader to make that particular quilt. That came out a long time ago through Oxmoor House. There were 28 quilts there, and it sort of reflects my passion for quilting, which I've been doing for many, many years, and I still do quilt a little. Wonderful. I'm not writing in that field so much anymore. And
you have a website.
I do.
That lists the publications and some beautiful pictures of the beautiful quilts you've done over the years. Yes. What other information can people find when they go to those websites? Your quilting website.
Quilting website, DiannLoganQuilts.com. Probably the first thing they'll come up on would be a collection of quilts called Daddy's Favorites. These are quilts that my father and I made together during the last 3 years of his life when it was time for him to come and live with us. So that whole transition came into play of him moving 700 miles, leaving behind his almost birthplace. He lived 1.5 miles from the homestead where he'd been born. So it was a big transition to move to the city, and it was a big transition for the two of us after I left for college. I hadn't lived at home in all of those years, and now all of a sudden we're back together with the dog and my husband. It was difficult and wonderful.
Yeah.
So we made quilts together.
How wonderful.
Probably 50 or 60 of them.
Oh my goodness.
So if people go to the website, that's one of the first things that they will encounter is the story of how those quilts came to be. The ones that are now finished, we've taken that as almost a traveling exhibit, you could call it, to senior facilities and quilt guilds where the story gets told of Daddy's life, essentially.
And I love how you named the quilts. They all have really interesting names. They're not just colors, but they evoke a feeling about them. Did you both come up with the names yourself? How did you come up with the titles for the different quilts?
Once in a while, Daddy had an idea for the title, but he really was more the person who did the sorting and opening up and getting ready to join the next thing, and he left the word part to me.
Okay.
I don't know if he really knew that I was writing stories, kind of intimate stories, about him as a young man, because I did tell tales on him that he spent a night in jail in West Texas in the 1930s for fisticuffs.
So fun.
I don't
fun
know
to know that about
I don't know
dad.
if he knew I was writing that, but
it's okay.
It is now.
Yeah,
yes,
it's true.
Because it's out there in print, so it's on the website.
That's marvelous. I love that story, and the website is really beautifully done, especially with the pictures of the quilts.
Thank you. I'm glad you had a good time.
I did, and I will be going back to visit because they're just really gorgeous. And people don't quilt much anymore. I think when we look at quilts, we want to do them, but I don't know if people know how to get even started with that anymore.
Au contraire, 30 million people worldwide are quilting.
Oh, good. I'm glad people are still quilting.
So there will always be quilts.
That's fabulous.
And if you would like to learn how to make one, you should take a class. It's doable.
Definitely. I think so. It makes me want to learn to do that.
Good.
So I hope people visit the website and get to see that.
Thanks.
Let's talk about this book, though. Very different book, The Naval Diaries. Not Army, but naval as in belly button. How I lost my belly button and found myself. What made you decide to write this book?
It's true. What I said in the book is true. When I looked in the mirror for years and years and years, I didn't see too much about myself that I would have called gorgeous, except my navel. That was my thing that made me pretty enough. I could get by. And so I guess I developed a very unreasonable attachment to it. I don't know, because I never really talked about that with other people.
Uh-huh.
But then I got pneumonia from environmental remodeling the garage, inhaling too much drywall dust.
Yep.
And I coughed and I coughed and I coughed, and all of a sudden, I don't have a gorgeous navel now. It's an outie. It's an umbilical hernia. And when I saw it the first time, I did exactly that. I couldn't believe it. And then I couldn't believe that I couldn't believe it. So I had to sit myself down and say, what's going on here? Why is that one thing that you prized so highly suddenly the symbol of it's over, it's all downhill from here? Oh. And I really had to talk to myself, and I chose to do it in a diary. And at some point, it seemed like I'm probably not the only one.
Right.
So why not publish it and let other people go through whatever it is for them that they're going through as they discover what maturity could mean.
Maturity. So when people talk about aging or getting old, you use the word maturity more.
I like it a little better.
And what age is someone mature? Or when do you know you're in those mature that mature age? Is there such a distinction in your opinion?
Well, I'm sure we all heard it from our parents when we were teenagers. You're too immature.
Yeah.
I don't think of it that way, but years ago I was at the perfume counter and I was trying on a fragrance. I can't even remember now what it was, but the person behind the counter said, "Oh no, that's a more mature fragrance for mature women." And I took it to mean what she was saying was, old ladies wear that fragrance. You don't want to buy that. So I didn't, because I wasn't mature yet. So it's very amorphous. That's the best description I can give you. I don't have a definition. I just don't like the word old because it carries so many connotations for other people that they're trying to attach to me.
Yeah.
Get that off me. It's like an old leech.
I agree. I like that word better too. More mature, not old, not even aging really, but mature.
Well, aging applies the minute you're born.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're doing that every second at any age. As I hear about your book, and I've read excerpts of it, it's not as much really about aging as it really is hanging on to things, maybe dealing with what we think we should see in the mirror. And how do you deal with that, and what advice do you give to somebody?
Well, as you can see, it took me a whole book, and I'm not there yet, of talking to myself and taking myself to task about whether or not what we've been told by our culture was ever the best way to look at ourselves.
Yes.
Because when I'm looking backwards in the book, I can't even think of my childhood or my teenage years without 1,000 songs and commercials and TV shows just washing over me and reminding me what I was told about here's how you should be. The same thing's going on now. I don't think I noticed it so much in between like 20 and 50, but then I started noticing what's coming at us now from the culture and from television and media, telling us here's what it is to be getting older, to be getting mature, or to be old. No one even uses the word elder. Isn't that an elegant word?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind being an elder if somebody would only come and ask me for advice. But of course, they don't.
Yes.
Because the culture's telling everyone else, don't bother with those old people. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of digging in my heels and getting a little cross about all of the influences that are not just telling me how to be, but telling other people how to perceive me and treat me. And of course, there are horror stories from anecdotal evidence from all kinds of people who are taken for less than they are, or their potential is overlooked because of their age or because they have some gray hair, and they get made fun of. And yet, in some cultures, that's where the wisdom resides. So the loss of a child is not seen as nearly tragic an event as the loss of an elder. Because when they go, all of their wisdom goes with them.
Yes.
So I'm taking
and it's true.
that piece. Yes, I'm taking that piece and trying to find out what does that mean for me.
Yes. And what I really like about the book is it's not about this aging gracefully sort of idea. It really does talk about the frustrations and the going against what we're told to be.
Well, it is frustrating to get shorter.
Yes.
Because last year everything fit, this year the pants are dragging the ground. There are frustrations that here's the reason I'm really cross. No one told me in advance. Otherwise I would have hemmed up those pants last winter so that when the first snow fell this winter, I wouldn't be dragging in the snow. No one warned me.
Yeah.
Yes, there are frustrations.
Yes.
There's also a sense of changing purpose and an awareness that what I thought was terribly important when I was 30 has now been accomplished or done. And there's a new reason for why I do what I do. And that's okay with me. It's just I haven't quite defined it yet.
Yeah. And do you have to?
Well, just in order to accomplish it, I think.
Okay.
Other people will probably define it as they look at me. That's their business. For me, I need to know what it is, and I also need to know it's okay that I have still changed my sense of purpose and that it's changing again and again and again.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose my sense of purpose or be told, get out of the way because whatever it is you're doing is not important.
Yeah. I just love the approach you take to it and the humor. And I also love the format that you've got with the book, because it's not what a lot of people are doing now, which is sort of rehashed blog posts. You said yours started as a diary, and it's really a collection of essays.
It is now, yes.
But you do blog also.
I do, but I didn't start doing that till well after this book was out there. The blog is on the website, thenavaldiaries.com, and I'm not one of those people that's going to come on every day and blog about what I had for breakfast.
Yeah.
But
There's enough of those. There's enough of those.
I do notice what's going on in the world and how it might impact me or the people around me. It is a book of diary entries, no way around it.
Okay, this is a tough question. Who would you say is the ideal audience for this book?
Of course, it's written around the boomer experience, and it's written from a woman's perspective because I'm only able to observe and then I'm told from men what it's like for them. But I also hear very young women who notice their first wrinkle. The men who have read this book have related to it in a good way. I don't know if there is an ideal audience.
Yeah.
Anybody that has ever faced that moment of truth in the mirror where they looked in the mirror and said, you know, I think I'm looking older than I actually feel and I don't like it. If you've been there ever once, I don't care if you're 15 or 20 or 40 or 80, the first time that moment hits you, I suppose you would enjoy the book.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I agree. And the humor in it also is very universal.
It's the only way I can get through it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You keep mentioning the
You have
word
to laugh
gracefully,
about it.
and I became aware there's not going to be any gracefulness here. So what else is there? It really helped me to make fun of myself.
Yeah.
And not to take myself so seriously, that having a navel that pokes out is not the end of the world.
It's not.
So,
it's definitely not. That's wonderful. Well, I would love to hear maybe an excerpt from the book, something you would like to share with us.
I'd be honored.
That would be wonderful.
We were just talking about the mirror.
Yes.
And what happens when you look in the mirror and
Yes.
you're not sure that's even you anymore? Where did that come from?
Yes.
Well, okay. Here is something that came to me as I experienced that.
Okay.
Seeing it in the mirror makes it real. We are seniors now. There are so many times when it's good to be a senior, like senior in high school, upperclassmen. Wow. Waves of freshmen better part like the Red Sea to clear a path in the hallway for a senior. Senior executive, senior diplomat, even senior staff member are positions with a lot of clout. Why do I have the sense that senior citizen doesn't fit in those ranks? Cars that were family transportation when we were kids are now vintage cars, prized precisely for their vintageness. Vintage humans who were on the planet before the vintage cars even rolled off the assembly line aren't accorded nearly the same kind of regard, aren't referenced as prized senior citizens. Instead, we're more likely noted for our potential for becoming a major social issue as we get too old to contribute much to the economy, while using up too much Medicare money. It's hard to value what we see in the mirror as right for us right now, when all social evaluation rules and regulations devalue everything about aging, make it a societal problem sans solution and a trial to be borne by the individual. I'm not having it.
That's marvelous. And just exploring that one word that seems to define us and how many different usages it is. But yeah, I love the word vintage is a beautiful word.
If it's in a clothing store.
If it's clothing, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Or at a car show.
That's marvelous.
No one's ever called me vintage, but
right.
It'll be interesting if someone ever does.
I'm going to call you Vintage
Oh,
Diann.
thank you.
I'm going to start calling you Vintage Diann.
Thank you.
That's great. Do you have another one you'd like to share? I would love to hear a little bit more.
Well, let's see. Shall we take a stroll down memory lane?
Sure.
Okay. There was a time when flying was fun.
Uh-huh.
No schlepping onto the plane in sweatpants and flip-flops. Oh, no. One dressed up for the occasion. Mm-hmm. Something snazzy. Maybe it was a super sharp tailored red suit with nylon stockings and saucy red snakeskin heels. Maybe it was an aquamarine slinky mid-calf skirt clingy dress. For a while, it was flowing bell-bottoms with a tunic and exotic platform sandals. Lo stesso movimento. It's a musical term that means play whatever music you're playing with a little movement, a little glide in the stride. And that is the best thing about airports and those airport costumes. Nothing is more fun than stepping onto one of the moving walkways and walking, not just riding, but striding at that wonderful, purposeful pace that tells the world, I am going somewhere. The added speed of the walkway creates the illusion of hair tousled and wind-blown back from the face, streaming out from behind this fabulous free-spirited woman, flattens clingy dresses against stunning long-waisted figures, makes an absolute tornado of bell-bottom pant legs and tunic sleeves. That's the rhythm I don't want to forget, because there are descriptors I don't want to be used about me as I get older. I don't want to be called spry. I swear I think I remember a brand of vegetable shortening called Spry. I don't want to be called feisty. Wouldn't that be a walk that looks like Walter Brennan? There's the rhythm I don't want to forget, because I'm still sending the world the same message. I am going somewhere.
That's marvelous, and you read it so well. I know it's your words, but you just put so much emphasis behind it. Do you ever do public readings? Could people ask you to do that through your website?
Of course.
I think that would be marvelous to have you do. So I hope you have your book website is different from your quilt website.
That's true.
And what types of things are on your book website?
The book website, thenavaldairies.com. Mm-hmm. There is a section of reviews from other people who've read the book, and I find those entertaining as well, because everyone has their own take.
Sure. And
the blog is there. There are excerpts from the book. There's contact information. There's all the ways that you could find the book. Mm-hmm. Certainly all the local stores are listed. Tattered Cover, sure. Book Bar. There's one actually up north in Longmont. Okay. That's a new bookstore. Mm-hmm. I believe it's called Colorado Editions.
Yes, yes, that's
local
right.
Editions.
Local Editions,
Local
yes.
Editions in
all
Longmont.
Colorado authors.
That's
yes.
right. Mm-hmm. That's right. So there are a lot of local places people could access it, but maybe they're not in Denver watching us. So, of course, it's on all the big places, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can order it directly from the website.
Mm-hmm. And the blog that you have, that one's on your book website?
It is.
And why, I'm so fascinated with that you wrote this as essays, but you have a blog. What are the differences between your blog posts and your essays?
The blog posts are quite short in comparison to the book. Right. Maybe a couple of paragraphs that struck me as I noticed something, and that something probably occurred in the world around me. This past spring, the hailstorms.
Yeah.
Well, there are some plants that only put up one big gorgeous flower, the tulips, and when the hail came, it's over for them. But the iris, even if they had something already in bloom, they also had buds. So the bloom that was there got hailed on, but the buds continued and still bloomed. And so I looked at that and I started thinking, well, what that tells me is we're supposed to bloom whenever we have a bloom and a bud set. So the blog is really just a short vignette of something that happened or something I saw or something I heard that got me thinking, gosh, why aren't we just blooming? Or, gosh, am I being tailgated by time? Yeah. That's because I was in traffic and someone was tailgating me and I wondered why they're in such a rush. Yeah. And why am I in such a rush to get, what, further down the road of maturity? I don't know. What's wrong with today, right here, right now?
Yeah, I love that term, tailgated by time. Yeah. You mentioned that earlier. I just love it. That's marvelous. So you actually talked about the process of your book and publishing at blueink.com or Blue Ink, and you did an interview with them.
That's true. Blue Ink Review also has a blog on their website.
Yes.
And they asked if I would be interviewed and speak about the process of indie publishing.
What types of things did you tell them? Because a lot of people might want to publish a book. They may decide to do it themselves or do indie publishing the first time instead of a big house. What types of things would you tell those people?
The first thing I would say is, if you don't know how to do it, get a professional who does. So have it professionally edited, have a professional design your cover. Don't skimp in those areas. And especially don't skimp on proofreading. I mean, I'm kind of a word freaky. You can tell that, can you? Yes. So if I pick something up that someone has self-published and it wasn't edited, or even finding one or two little boo-boos, you'd think they're little boo-boos. No, to me, they're typos. Yeah. Spend the money to have that done professionally. Yes. That's the first, I think, the first order of business. If you want to indie publish, work with a good publisher, as I did, Terracotta Publishing. It's an imprint of Third Chapter Press. Okay. And Dr. Andrea Sims is the publisher. I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. It's very close. When you indie publish, you work much more closely with a publisher than if you go with a big house. And there's a reason to go with an agent and a big house. Right. But then there's a reason not to. And I think time is a lot of it as well. If you indie publish or self-publish, you have the opportunity to put whatever it was that you wanted to say out there for other people much sooner. Yes. It doesn't take as long. Yes. So those are the kinds of things that Blue Ink asked me. Actually, can I talk about the person that asked me?
You sure can,
This was such a fluke. You think that the world is full of strangers, but it's not. And we didn't mention this yet, but I am on faculty at UC Denver. Okay. All right. So the person who called me to interview me was a former student who got an internship working with Blue Ink for the summer, and she saw the book come through, my book come through for a review, and she saw the name and she thought, I wonder if that's my crazy old professor, and called me, and indeed it was.
Yeah. How wonderful. Yeah. Her crazy vintage professor.
There, thank you.
Yes, yes, I'm sure that's what she thought. It must have been wonderful to know that one of your students was actually interning with somebody like Blue Ink, which is so wonderful. Sure. So that's fun. Well, yeah, sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know, gets a foot in the door, and it really has been a wonderful experience to read your book. I would love to know what your next project is, your next writing project. Are you thinking about more Naval Diaries?
There is a sequel.
Oh, excellent.
It's called Dear Naval Diary. Are you listening? Because there's no point to talk to yourself about how silly you're being unless you're actually paying attention.
a clever
So again,
title.
I'm taking myself to task,
Sure.
and any of the rest of us who are having a little difficulty with whatever it is that, you know, I mean, I count myself really fortunate because I have excellent health. But I also think that the media could help us out here if it would stop portraying older people, elders, as always unhealthy.
Yeah.
When they get a part in a movie, they're always the tragic figure or the
Frail.
well, they're
sickly,
frail or they're
yeah.
needy, and I'm not saying that those things aren't occurring. Of course they are,
Sure.
but maybe it's not as prevalent as the media is making it seem.
Sure.
So I'm grateful that
Yeah.
my health is really, really good. However, there's still some stuff going on in there that I brought with me from grade school that I really need to look at. And I think a lot of us are in the same situation. So,
Well, anybody with the gift you have for humor should definitely get it out there and put it down on paper and share it with everybody, because it's really refreshing.
I can tell you one of the essays that's coming up in
yes.
that book.
Preview. Oh, yeah.
Well, because I like fast cars. I always have.
Yeah.
And I have a bit of a history as a small town drag racing queen. And so when I thought about what's being said in calling that woman who won every race a little old lady, I just got doggone irritated. So I had to write about it.
That's fabulous. Oh, I can't wait to hear about it. I am curious though, if you're thinking about putting a project together about what we talked about earlier, your father and the quilting. That is such a touching story.
It is. It's a sometimes funny, but more often very poignant story that many, many families go through.
Definitely.
Caring for an elder, parenting your parent while your parent is parenting you. What could be a better situation that would call for a big family commotion? There it is.
Yes.
So yes, I do have a plan for that. It probably won't be next, but it's definitely in the works. And I've discovered just I don't know, a couple of months ago, I don't know how this happened, I've discovered I can write poetry. What a shock. So
why not?
I'm writing
Why
a little
not?
poetry. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, except that I write it and I bring it upstairs in the morning and I make my husband listen as he's having breakfast, and he seems to think that it's fun
It's
and marvelous and interesting and moving. So, you know, when he tells me that, I think, well, okay, maybe I'll publish it. We'll see.
I love it. I love it, and I just think it's wonderful. I'm so glad you're putting all of this together. A last question about the Naval Diaries.
Okay.
What message would you like for people to take away after they read this book?
We all have to find our own way, that we are going to come to terms with the age that's coming. Whatever your age is now, it won't be the same tomorrow. And I think it's better if each individual sets their own course instead of letting a culture set a course for you. Big talk. That's what I'm trying to do. Every time I write to myself in my diary, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So I'm not in a position to give a message to other people because I'm no expert on aging. I'm barely an expert on what's going on with me.
Yeah.
Still, I think each one of us gets to choose whether or not we'll let ourselves be guided or whether we will step into the driver's seat and say, this is my life and this is how I'm going to live it. And I'm going to keep wearing tight jeans until I don't know when. But I'm not going to let some young whippersnapper tell me, look here, lady, those jeans are too tight. That's not going to happen. They might tell me that, but I'm going to say, oh yeah, watch this.
I definitely get all of that from this book.
As you should.
Diann, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us your light and your humor and sharing all of these wonderful things with us. A lovely vintage lady over here I got to talk with today.
Well, right back at you. Not that you're vintage. However, it's been certainly a pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You bet. Thanks again. Check your local libraries for the books that we talked about on today's show, and join us for more next time on Off the Page.